Well, good morning, everybody. Here from the Temple of Silence. Dawn is just coming now that we're off of the summertime. And let me see, I think I can change things to a better back screen. Well, it's an important week coming up. Um, we have in America the election of members of Congress and members of the Senate, and the executive branch has put its imprimatur on the entire election. So it is a referendum on how we think the progress has been going. And of course, it does tend to affect the whole world. There are many now imitators of the way things are going in the US. So when we deal with the glamour of untruth, of misrepresentation, of distortion, we're dealing with a real thing. It's been said of us that we're living in a post-truth era. Uh, that is not a very pleasant thought, because without the truth, we don't know how to act intelligently and in line with the divine plan. So we here, I'm still in Finland, and I hope we'll come to the United States in a week or two. By that time, it'll be all over and just beginning in a way. But we will be holding a kind of a meditative vigil here during the election period in the United States. Of course, so many votes have come in by absentee ballot and all that, and are counted. But nevertheless, the spirit of the values upon which the United States was founded should really be in the air on election day. So I'm not sure whether it will be a webinar or whether it will be a broadcast, but we'll let you know. And mostly it's an open space for meditating to support the soul of America, uh, which is said to light the way and lead, in some sense, other nations forward. Well, it can't do that now under the present misguidance. So we have to really work for the instilling of soul value. So we'll let you know probably from 5 o'clock in the morning, U.S. time. We'll have an ongoing open space. Whether or not we'll have a chance to talk or not, I don't know. There'll be some music and maybe some readings, but mostly it will be a chance to be together in meditation for those who have moments during that larger period of time. So it's important, I think. Also, I want to say that I'm using the opportunity to finish commentary on the book Treatise on White Magic. I'm now into rules for the physical plane, and some 10 hours maybe of 10 hours of commentary have been completed, and they should be soon posted upon Makara and also upon our YouTube channel. Now, I don't know if you want to dive right into rules for the physical plane before working on the mental plane and the astral plane, and those are already there. 109 programs, and for the for the mental and astral plane, and more hours, because some of those programs are actually lengthier than 1 hour. So if you feel so inclined to study the book, it's a wonderful book. And to do that in group form, I think that some of these programs can be of assistance to you. You know, we're in that Scorpio period where we have to win over some kind of negativity. Well, you know, we're certainly presented with many opportunities to conquer the negativity within ourselves and within the um, human psyche. Um, so, you know, let's just do our best to use the Scorpio energy to the best of our ability. We have the also the death and dying video that is here in the chat box, and I think one of the major things to overcome is the fear of death, which, as the Tibetan says, lurks in everybody, and until it's confirmed that what he says is true, then maybe that fear will be a latent factor. So I suggest that you get a hold of this, which Olivia has produced, and the way to do that is right here. And right, death and dying well. Okay, friends, so let's just have a little. I assume that I can be heard, or Michael, as the voice of God, would tell me that I cannot be, and I'd be off on one of my usual pantomimes. Okay. Let's just have a little preliminary alignment. We are coming together, um, some 20-something of us at this time, and we're working together in consciousness wherever we may be located geographically. It doesn't make any difference in the esoteric world. We consider ourselves to be as a single instrument working under the direction of Master DK and the methods he is suggesting for understanding glamour, illusion, and Maya, and doing something about it subjectively. And we will be using the proper form suggested in order to help clear this Kama Manasic area of confusion which holds so many consciousnesses in prison, in thrall, as they say, with confidence that what we do will have an eventual effect. This is, you know, just the beginning droplets of the monsoon that Master KH talks about. The kind of work we're doing presages a time when there will be a very concerted attack on glamour by many human beings standing in a state of spiritual being, steadfastly together, but it has to begin somewhere. So, over the last decades, there have been beginnings made, and one day there will be a very, very effective assault on this great problem, this great distortion, about which both Alice Bailey and the Tibetan have said they have a certain horror of glamour because it's so misleading and so obstructive to the real progress of humanity. So that's what we're going to do today, as well as finish our readings on illusion. And I would recommend, of course, we studied this in the Moria Federation. We have a whole 2 months on it, I think. It's never enough. I would suggest, getting together with a few of your friends and look at each illusion and how it may apply to your own life, if you can see it, and dig deeply into its nature. Here we can introduce the ideas and say a few things, but it needs more time and special concentration by those who are interested. The thing is, we have to be able to identify the glamours. They so often evade our recognition, and we have to be able to identify the illusions. And they too, perhaps even more, evade our understanding. And they'll be with us for a long time, maybe in ever-lessening form, but there are illusions right now we can't even understand. They occur in relationship to very high consciousnesses, which are focused on the planes of the spiritual triad, and yet it's still illusion. But DK, if we get that far, he says some very interesting things about the final illusion, the final synthetic illusion that was dispelled for himself by the initiate Jesus on the cross. Very interesting, and we'll see how that particular illusion fits into our understanding. So that's how we'll work, and we'll just sound the Om. Okay, now just welcome everybody who is here, Alexandra and Veronica, Anna, Annette, Ario, Gretchen, Helen, Jean-Pierre, Karen, Catherine, Leslie, Marianne, Martha, Natalie, Olivia, Sam, Stacia, Suzanne, Tiu, Vera, and Michael. Stacy is backing us up here on the staff side to make sure we have no technical mishaps of which I may be unaware. So here we are. This we have studied a little bit, 5 types of illusion. Let's reviewing them right here. Illusion through the wrong perception of an idea. Illusion through wrong interpretation. Illusion through wrong appropriation of ideas. There is no ownership of ideas. Through wrong direction of ideas, and through wrong integration of an idea. Now, Master DK assures us that students such as we are very rarely, if at all, touch a pure idea. Usually it's some formulation of an idea that we might find upon the abstract mind, if we're fortunate, and we can penetrate that far, or maybe even a concrete-minded formulation, which of course will leave a great deal out of the true meaning and energy impact of the idea. But, we'll work our way up, and before long, and eventually, we will be in a position to touch those pure beings that we call ideas and that have a tremendous energy impact when they really seize one. You know, the old saying, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. So here's number 6, and then we'll look at number 7. We're looking at illusion through the wrong embodiment of ideas. This refers primarily to the difficulties encountered by those developed souls who do touch the world of the intuition, who do intuit the great spiritual ideas, and whose responsibility it is to embody them in some form, automatically and spontaneously. That would be the ideal, through a trained and rhythmic activity of the soul and mind, working always in the closest collaboration. So not everybody will be subject to this illusion, because we have to be subject to it, a developed soul who actually touches the realm of the intuition and the great spiritual ideas. Maybe we think we do, and maybe at times we do, but we should not take it for granted. And training is required here, a trained and rhythmic activity of the soul and mind, and of course seeking to impress the brain in the proper manner. And do we have that? The trained rhythmic activity of the soul and mind. So we have the intuition, the soul, the mind, and the brain, all working in close collaboration, and these are the high realizations which guide the spiritual ascent of the human race and of the planet. So what happens here? The idea is contacted by these developed souls, but is wrongly clothed in mental matter, and therefore wrongly started on its way to materialization. I guess it takes a certain real refinement of understanding to present the true nature of such high ideas, the great spiritual ideas. And if our choice of mental concepts and words and images is incorrect, then that idea will never reach the consciousnesses of people in a way that conveys its true nature. So we have to be very, very discriminating regarding our presentation of such ideas. And in a way, the most refined kind of language has to be used. You know, we can say, oh, well, you know, it's all one, it's all one. Okay, but then how really can you describe that occult platitude and what it means to oneself and to others, and how it is perceived, and what are the implications and the corollaries of that statement? There are many great spiritual ideas, but if they are to be understood, they have to be really rightly presented through a discriminating choice of mental matter and substance in general. So this idea is wrongly started on its way to materialization, and there's so many people in the world who just are very, very far from understanding anything about such ideas, even in their mental presentation. Forget the energy impact of the idea. They're a long way even from understanding the mental formulation. How shall it be presented? And to whom shall it be presented. You cannot present every great spiritual idea to every type of individual, because it will just not be accepted, or it will not have an impact. So this idea, it finds itself, for instance, integrated into a group thought form of a coloring, a keynote, and substance, which is entirely unsuited to its right expression. Let's just say we have, what can I call it? We would have an unworthy formulation. We sometimes marvel at people who can present great ideas with such clarity that for a moment the vibration of the world from which those ideas come is ours, and it registers. And other people just say things and cannot capture at all the essence of the idea. Maybe in the secret doctrine, you go to the secret doctrine, and there are fundamentals, such as there is one boundless, immutable principle. Well, the implications are huge if we really try to discover what they are. That all things in creation are subject to the law of periodicity. It's a great spiritual formulation. How can we bring it into the appreciation of the average aspiring consciousness? That all souls are aspects or parts of the oversoul. How should we describe the oversoul? How should we describe this relationship of this wonderful idea of unity in the one great soul? These are foundational, great spiritual ideas formulated abstractly, and they mean just about nothing to so many. But our type of presentation will make a difference. So the idea, as we begin to formulate it, may be integrated into a group thought form of a coloring, keynote, and substance which is entirely unsuited to the right expression. So then we ask ourselves, what coloring, what keynote, what substance will be really suited to the right expression of this idea? We have to exert much caution. Now, this, says the Tibetan, this use of the wrong substance, coloring, and keynote happens far more often than you might think. You'll find this if you try to deliver some of the high thoughts of the ageless wisdom to people who have not much experience or maybe no experience with it. What shall you choose to really represent the great idea? He says it concerns the higher interpretation of the Hindu aphorism, better one's own dharma than the dharma of another. So there are certain ideas with which we have a real affiliation, and we don't want these ideas to slip over into an inappropriate context. We have to maintain the proper context, coloring, keynote, and substance. Well, this takes a lot of practice. So it doesn't affect everybody. As we begin to talk about these illusions, they have more to do with people who are well along the path. So DK tells us this is illusion through wrong discrimination where substance is concerned. Now, there are all these layers of mental substance that we use to clothe an idea, and we have to have some connection with the feeling of the substantial layers of the mental plane to choose correctly. So how do we best present an idea so that it does not confuse and mislead and give the wrong indication, the wrong impression? Otherwise, misunderstanding results and the idea will never have its true impact. What about its cause? Its cause is the lack of esoteric training in creative activity. Now, obviously, when we use the word creative and esoteric training in the same breath, we are speaking of the white magical process. So in that book are the suggestions about how to clothe an idea appropriately so that it has a proper presentation. The cure, and we all have the fifth ray, of course. We all have all the rays, and the mind itself is generically under the fifth ray. Its cure is the application of fifth ray methods, which are the methods of the mental plane, and let's just say these methods are highly discriminative. That's the one thing about the fifth ray. It can really tell this from that. It can really distinguish. It really knows the level of vibration of the particular strata of the mental plane. So I would say, when you touch an idea, give it a dignified presentation, and yet a presentation appropriate to the person to whom you're talking or to whom you are writing. And if there are no such people within range, then don't present the idea, because it will just be misunderstood and may deepen illusion further. You just can't talk or write about certain things to certain audiences because they're not ready for it, and it can cause a lot more harm than good. DK tells us that if the average person contacts the hierarchical vibration prematurely, that the condition in which they are existing, which is a limited condition, will be frozen, and they will be prevented from making progress. So hierarchy has to be very careful about exposing its vibration to unready people. Master Hilarion has another way of describing this. He says, make sure you don't put a muddy foot on the electric ladder, because the mud will cake, it will freeze, and it will lock you into a step from which you cannot make further progress. So, there's a real need to speak appropriately to whom one can, and to be as cleansed in one's nature as is possible when attempting to ascend into the realms of solar fire and electric fire especially. Okay, he says, now obviously we really, have to study this, and you have to think of instances in your own life where this may have happened, if it has happened. This form of error seldom applies to the average aspirant. And, he tells us, please consider yourself the average aspirant. Otherwise, you find yourself guilty of the one great heresy, the heresy of separateness. You hold yourself apart from others. So this form of error, and really all illusion, let's get that straight, because I think that's a very, all illusion is error. especially in the realm of thinking and manifesting. We just approach incorrectly with the mind, which is not an illumined mind, and we make mistakes regarding the true nature of an idea. So this form of error seldom applies to the average aspirant and concerns an illusion, which is the testing. Notice we confront the illusion as a test, the testing applied to many initiates of fairly high degree. Well, what's he talking about? Second degree, third degree? Maybe? Fourth degree? I don't know. It looks like the initiate Jesus overcame quite a bit at the fourth degree. But we have to be very careful about how he uses the word Jesus and how he uses the word Christ or Maitreya. And sometimes you just can't tell, except from what he said elsewhere. The ordinary disciple, and he points the finger here at his group, the ordinary disciple, such as you and others in this group, so that's clear, isn't it? Seldom touch a pure idea, and hence seldom need to embody it, a pure idea. Usually it's an adaptation of an idea which is met on the plane of higher mind or maybe the abstract mind, but a pure idea, well, coming from the fourth subplane of the Buddhic plane, he says seldom. Okay, so let's take his word for it, but still to be informed of this, because we may touch in our meditation some very high space where something unusually pure makes its way into our consciousness. What do we do with it? And here is we have to have esoteric training in creative activity. Really, we have to be white magicians, actually, and none of us really is a white magician. We are students of white magical practice. Somewhere he just said that, and I was making a commentary on it, and but not the real thing, not yet. Okay, so that's illusion through the wrong embodiment of ideas. It's just like, having a gemstone, and you want to choose a setting for the gem. You don't put it in some cheap brass setting if it's of great value. You have to have the right setting for the presentation of the gem, whether it's a true gemstone or the gem of an idea. And this requires great discrimination. Now, there is the seventh application, or way of illusion, let's just say, a process which leads to misrepresentation of an idea. That's what illusion can be understood as, through the wrong application of ideas. Illusion through the wrong application. How often does this form of illusion descend upon a disciple? Seems to be fairly common, right? He contacts an idea intuitively, but let's just say the full impression is there, perhaps, but it's not yet worked through the mind. The full energy of the idea is there, but you have to do something with that full energy, because an idea is a very potent thing which has to be presented, also presented to your own concrete thinking apparatus so you can understand. He contacts an idea intuitively and also intelligently. So one is the full energy impact, but it may be nonverbal. Sometimes, suddenly you get everything at once and you don't break it out yet sequentially into a form of words. You haven't really engaged the mental apparatus to deal with this energy presentation of the idea. And maybe we, at different opportunity, we have different moments in our life when maybe that has happened, okay? So DK says, please note the distinction here expressed. The mind is not cognitively engaged yet. It must be, because, maybe in the days of the coming telepathy, it's going to be possible to pass a pure idea from sender to receiver without the intermediary of the explaining mind. Maybe that will happen. He seems to imply that when telepathy becomes truly manageable and understood, that this kind of thing will happen. But right now, we have the intermediary, Mercury, we might say, of words and symbols to convey, because we cannot pass the purity from one to another. So anyway, this number 7, this is perhaps an aspect of the synthetic illusion, or the illusion of the whole of the mental plane as modern man contacts it. It has to do with what the mind generally does with some pure form of energy. We're told, the mind is the slayer of the real. I've seen that so many times, but I've also seen the well-used mind as the revealer of the real. And if we really learn how to use our mental apparatus subtly and delicately, something of the original can come through. So anyway, this is a synthetic illusion he discusses. Illusion varies from age to age according to what the hierarchy is attempting to do and according to the general trend of men's thoughts. Well, we'd have to study in a way the history of ideas and their descent and their correct interpretation and incorrect interpretation. The disciple can therefore be swept into a wrong activity and a wrong application of ideas because of the general illusion, growing out of the 6 types of illusion to which I have referred above. The combination of all these types of illusion he names as the general illusion, because the general illusion is over-dominant in his mind. We have not an illumined, organized, well-stocked, well-fortified, clear mental apparatus. Now, when you study with Master DK, that's one of the things that happens. Your mind becomes clearer and clearer. The accusation will be leveled at students of DK that, they are of the mental type, not the spiritual type, but as if you could really make a convincing discrimination there. I think not. The mind has to be used to approach the higher realms of spirituality, and we're learning how to train the mind to do that so it can happen every time scientifically instead of just now and then and out of our control. So DK goes on, I could continue enlarging on the ways whereby illusion traps the unwary disciple. And that's the word, isn't it? Because in all of these things, which are very subtle, we're not aware that we're in a trap. We're not aware that our thinking is illusory, that it is full of glamour. We're not aware. And so we continue on our way, doing things as we have always done them, and suffer and make others suffer as a result. So I could continue enlarging on the ways whereby illusion traps the unwary disciple, but this will suffice to awaken in you that constructive analysis which leads from knowledge to wisdom. That's what we all have to engage in as we work on the plane of the mind, held as steadily as possible in the light. So now he summarizes the 7 major ways of doing things, of thinking, that lead to illusion, trends of mind, and they are as follows. So, every one of these should be reviewed, and we should make sure, because there's a lot of information here, we should make sure we really understand the way of wrong perception, the very first method of illusion on which he spent quite a bit of time. The way of wrong interpretation. We bring a poor, feeble mind to the interpretation of the idea, and we can't possibly grasp it. The way of wrong appropriation, that idea is not ours, and we don't want to feed the ego with the idea. The idea belongs to everyone, and if we happen to be an instrument that can receive it, then good, but it doesn't belong to any personality, and soul is group conscious. Think about in mathematics, the calculus. I mentioned it, how Newton and Leibniz received the calculus, widely separate in their countries, at more or less the same time, and how the controversy has raged. Who discovered the calculus? Well, in fact, they both did. They both were instruments of reception, and they both emphasized different aspects of it, and they both responsibly presented it to the world to good effect. And the question of ego, I did it, it's mine, should not have entered. It did kind of enter, I think, in the case of Newton. The way of wrong direction, where shall we send that idea? How shall we direct life process according to that idea? And the idea can find itself in a completely hostile environment, just in the wrong place. If I were with certain people who had a type of thought language, and I started to direct my idea into their discourse, it would be completely inappropriate and useless and would have a counter effect. The way of wrong integration with what other, how can the idea truly be integrated into a context where it can be useful? Or is it forced to abide within a context in which it is an inappropriate energy? You'll find your own way of describing this, and as you examine your life, you'll see what you may have done with an idea. I know as a young student of esotericism, I thought I had a lot of great ideas. And then I directed them into contexts in which they were not welcome whatsoever, and were seen as disruptive, and were rejected, and were thrown back at me, and there was a wonderment how I could believe such nonsense and all that. I just was not sufficiently discerning as to where an idea could be inserted and applied. And as we have studied here, the way of wrong embodiment, the wrong substance and coloring and keynote, an undignified, inappropriate setting. Just think of that analogy of the beautiful jewel, and what does a setting do for it? Or how does the setting work against it? And then finally, this larger consideration of general wrong application, a kind of a synthesis of all of them. These are the steps. These are the third steps towards expression. I mean, we have to touch the idea. It has to work out through the soul, but down on the level of dense application, we're dealing with the third aspect of divinity, the anchoring on the physical plane, the brain. It has to do with the number 3. The form of the expression is also qualified, and thus the 7 ways of illusion are produced. And I guess I could say that I've been studying these on and off for a long time. I don't find them easy, but I find that it is necessary to dig into them and just see what people do with their thoughts and with maybe the presentation of an idea and all the distortion that occurs and the unhappy circumstances which arise because of following out one or other of these errors. Okay, well, let's see. See if there's anything else we can do. Yeah, there's some beautiful stuff here, but I think maybe we're going to wait till the next time. And in the next time, it will tell us about how Master Jesus, or the initiate Jesus, really under the guidance of the Christ, I think, dispelled all these illusions by, and note this, entering fully into the consciousness that he was God himself and naught else. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? It can refer to the solar angel. It can refer to the former conception of what God was and the dispelling of the illusion of that conception. So that's one we're going to want to concentrate on. It's an amazing thought that identification as God is a summary point whereby many illusions all at once can be dispelled. He dissipated the illusion or dispelled the illusion of the personal objective deity. He himself became that. So I think that's too big an issue to take up right now because we've been working here for 45 minutes on all this. So we'll take this up next time. I think today is All Souls Day, isn't it? All Saints Day, November the 2nd. It's not Halloween anymore, but the more spiritual side here in Europe is being brought forward. So on the 9th, when we get together again, then we'll do that. We'll go into this dispelling of a great final illusion of duality, where God is one thing and you are something else. And, people will say to you, well, what are you saying? That you are God? Well, rightly understood, that is precisely what you are saying, according to the great emanative scheme of things in Buddhism and in Gnosticism. And if we approach it correctly, we will avoid the error of applying the lower ego to the idea that I am God, that we are all God. All right, now I'm going to just insert here. Okay, right here. So this is the end then of Dissipation of Glamour number 93, and I don't know where we are quite, but today is the 2nd of November, so it's going to be the 33rd reading that we've had, and the end of the 93rd program. And this is November, good old November. And we're on a certain page. I don't know how far we've gotten, up to page 65. All right. And then we're going to begin with number 94, and our academic reading will be number 34. Okay. 34, sorry. And this will be on the 9th of November. And we will, unless for some reason my travels interfere, and then I will let you know, okay? So maybe I'm incorrect about number 64. Maybe it is, let's see, where are we here? Yeah, 65 is correct. So we'll begin at page 65. All right, friends, well, this question of illusion, we are all trying to be thinking disciples, and we're trying to move from intellect to intuition, as the book tells us. Other categories should be added to that sequence, from instinct to intellect to intuition to illumination, which in some lists follows the intuition. It's a further state of intensity of the intuition, and perhaps belongs more to the atmic plane and planes above. That's what we're trying to do, so that as reasonably good thinkers, we can become impressed by the truth of pure reason, intuitively impressed, and know how things really are, instead of just how we think they are. Okay, so that'll be enough of that. And now, opening up the floor to questions or statements on these matters, or on any matters having to do with occultism, as it's all one big study, really, and everything leads to everything else. So, your thoughts? I know I go on a bit here, but I hope you've been taking notes, and I've got a question here. So this is from Suzanne, and she asks, would the admonition of Jesus, cast not pearls before swine, apply to the care that must be taken in sharing occult ideas? I think that's precisely the case. I hate to call my fellow human beings swine, because I well know that there are pearls that the higher beings have, and in this case, I and others are in the pig pen, relatively speaking. But that is what he meant. And Master Moria said it in different ways. He said, speak proportionately to your interlocutor, to the person with whom you are conversing. Understand the consciousness of the one you are addressing or with whom you are having a conversation. And do not throw out ideas, gems of ideas, well formulated, to those who cannot possibly appreciate their meaning and who have no hope of really reaching an understanding, such as their stage of limitation, and who will, in fact, throw them right back at you. As they say of the swine, they will rend them underfoot, stomp on them, and so forth. It takes a lot of discrimination, because you want to provide opportunity. So basically, you offer something that people can reach. You change your wording, you change your approach. I've had to do this all the time. And those to whom one might be able to speak of certain subjects in an what should we say, unadapted manner, maybe they are few. So we are being spoken to by Master DK in a very adapted manner. The ABCs of occultism are being presented to us, and he despairs at times with these poor, paltry things called words of presenting the real perception, the real idea, but it's what he has, and he works with it, I think, very skillfully. So, what can we do? When we are presented with an idea or a thought, which is really foreign and maybe seems beyond our reach, what do we do? Do we just reject it because it's beyond our reach, because we don't have the capacity to really understand? Or do we, say, okay, I'll take this under advisement, ponder on this. Now, DK talks about being given by his teacher. This is in discipleship number 2, a statement. All ashrams are found upon the Antakarana. He did not glibly say, well, this is my interpretation. No, he took it away, and for months, and I don't know how long, a long time, pondered on it. He didn't understand it at first, but then he pondered on it, and gradually the meaning came to him. So maybe we have to, when we don't understand something that seems to have the ring of truth about it, we can take it under advisement. And instead of giving a glib and spontaneous answer, we ponder until a truer understanding comes. It's the right attitude. Now, the untrained mind just says, oh, that's a bunch of nonsense, and throws it back at you. If you might even tell some very scientific types, okay, there is life after death, and they'll throw it right back at you. This is nonsense. When it's over, and that's that, and the end has come. You don't know what you're talking about, et cetera, et cetera. There's no attempt, even with that simple statement, to really look into it. Anyway, Suzanne, yeah, that's exactly what it applies to. Okay.
Michael?
Yes, Michael.
Alexandra has raised her hand.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Alex, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so I have a comment about that and a question about that, what you just said. So first of all, the comment. So here we are in this week where something's going to happen. It's going to happen over in America. The tree is shaken over there, and then the apples fall elsewhere. It must be like boring for people to constantly hear, tragedy or positivity coming out of America, but it is important what happens there. So then this vote is going to take place, and then a bunch of thoughts are going to follow that, either positive or negative, depending upon, which side of the line you fall on. So my question is about thoughts, but first I wanted to make a comment that anyone who knows anyone who, there are apparently 9 million expat Americans, and I've been working in the London campaign office for votefromabroad.org. So if anyone knows anyone who is American but not living there, it seems important to cast your vote. Your vote still can be counted up until November 6th if it's postmarked. And you go to votefromabroad.org and they tell you how to do it and they help you, this sort of thing. And just talking to people, what I found, and working there, what I found is important is just showing up and give attention to this. Give attention to this, because, we haven't. Not just with American voting, but in so many situations, we have to give attention to it and give energy to it. So I found that's very significant.
That's very good. Very good indeed.
Yeah. My question is that last week you spoke about, I listened to the recording because I couldn't be there. It was so beautiful. You spoke about touching the void and 10,000 things that can take our attention. And if we're troubled by thought forms, there isn't space, I'm quoting you, there isn't space in our consciousness to make these very subtle registrations to clean out our consciousness and clean out our mental perception. So, when a political event or a tragedy or something happens, it does stir up people's thoughts. And when we are speaking to people who are spiritually oriented, but not esoterically oriented, so in other words, they don't know DK or Alice Bailey, what I'm asking you is that we know the lunar Petries create or build the forms of man on the lower three levels. Thus, we understand the effect of desire, thoughts, and words. We know thoughts are things. We know the power of thoughts and words. How do you explain to someone else who doesn't know about lunar Petries and the elementals, what is a good way to really get across that it's a scientific fact, not a nice idea, that as a man thinketh, so is he? What I still haven't been able to, I mean, I do use, as a man thinketh, so is he, thoughts are things. But DK actually explains how that happens. And how do you explain elementals?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of language you want to use. I think Tuija is better at this than I am, actually. But I refer to the building forces of nature, and I refer to
building forces.
building forces of nature, which are basically Davic, and how there is all of this motion, ceaseless motion, going on among these lower forms of life. And how the necessity for stillness enters, so that registration from still higher areas can be apprehended. Actually, what DK basically says, teach the constitution of man. And so we have some charts. DK has given them to us, and people like Keith Bailey and Tuija have elaborated on them, and also from the Simply Sacred group. There have been a number of elaborations where the coloring is put in and things look more agreeable. Show these things to people so that they will know something about the different parts of the human being and how activity within one or other has to be subdued so that greater impression can occur. He says, really, you need only two things, a knowledge of the constitution of man and your next step ahead. He simplifies it that much. So that if I have one of those charts available to me, I find that it really makes my explanation more assimilable, because after all, we are speaking a new language to people. And I try to put it in atomic, molecular language, maybe not so much about elements and elementals and lunar lords. You can talk that way. The minute you say lunar lords, you're gonna lose some people. But I try to put it in modern language and then show the graphs, and then maybe even become still with such an individual and say, well, the old saying, why does it exist? Be still and know that I am God. Well, you can explain it in terms of the different levels of activity. And sometimes I use an analogy about a still pond or a still lake, and how the image of the sun can be reflected with integrity upon a still surface, but how it's entirely broken up in choppy waters. So you can use different analogies to get through to people, and they may just grasp that. There has to be an interest eventually in the hidden side of things. So you approach by saying, I think the hidden side of things is real. Here are the charts which show our structure, the separability of the different principles and units in a map, in a human being. And here is the condition of alignment which we need in order really not to get in the way of the truth. We're all stirred up. Our emotions are all stirred up now. And if we can just quiet these things, just quiet down, the truth is always waiting to reflect itself on the still surface of a stilled mind and a stilled emotional vehicle. And of course, we're not running around with the physical body either. So be still and know that I am God. I know, Alex, that you know many ways of addressing this in language that will reach whomever. But that's where the skill comes in. Who is this person? How can they be reached? What is their language? What makes sense to them? I just had a marvelous weekend with an old friend that I've known for 70 years, and we met each other when we're 7 years old, and he's a total brilliant materialist. And so we're really speaking two different languages, and I was tested to the extreme in trying, unsuccessfully I might add, to get across the esoteric point of view. But I did notice that he was quieter in his rejection of my thoughts than earlier. So I deem that to be progress. He just wants me to understand that when you die, you're dead forever and consciousness is completely extinguished. I want him to understand that the different principles of man are separable and consciousness continues. And it was a great battle and a lot of fun. I don't think I succeeded. Maybe you'll succeed better than I do. But have people quiet down and realize that the truth exists and can be reflected in their mind if they will just get their usual disturbances out of the way. I guess
Not just that, but that their thoughts matter. So for example, now on the news, especially on CNN, they're throwing this around. Words matter.
Yes.
Oh,
I saw that.
Oh,
I saw that.
yeah. So I remember speaking about that, last year. Words matter, how you say them, and now all of a sudden, there's a bit of hypocrisy here in the news outlets who have used these words to help create the situation we're now in, and now they're so horrified at the words that are being spoken at the highest level, and they're telling everyone words matter. As if this is a revelation. But for more spiritually inclined people, thoughts matter, and and especially when something big is going to happen, and afterwards, like I remember after the referendum here, there was a thought cloud that descended, and people were voicing it. And so this is what I'm saying, is speaking to people, telling to them, your thoughts matter, not just your words matter, but your thoughts matter. But I can't mention lunar lords.
Well, I tell you what,
That's why
I had a German translation of my book on the seven rays, and of course I was referencing lunar vehicles, and it turned up in German as moon cars. So I thought, wait a second, we have to look into this. Moon cars is not quite what I meant to say, but also I think the way to tell people that their thoughts matter is to say that there are thoughts created outside of the beam of light, and there are thoughts created by a mind held steady in the light. And where does that light come from? And you can show them on the graphs and the charts, and they can imagine that they create thoughts within the light. And I think it does have a good effect. We always talk about the mind held steady in the light, and we're just trying to transfer that idea to the people who are talking, thinking, and so forth. Let there be lighted thoughts. And the images help, I think. Yeah, okay. Well, here we go. We have a week. We have a week of it. Let's see, And I don't know, in Britain, um, this whole idea of having another referendum, I don't know how that's going. Um, maybe,
It's
maybe
going.
it's going.
It's
It's
going.
moving along, and
The thought has built momentum. There were 700,000 people on the street. Actually, it was nearly a million. I was there, and it was, I think it was important to be there because you could feel and see, the energy that's behind this. But
yeah,
again, this is the situation with democracy now: is that the people aren't making the decisions.
yeah,
The people can just
exactly.
make their voice heard, but they're not making the decisions.
Well, the first step,
So this is why we can't have the thought form of despair
no,
because of what the
no,
government is doing.
no.
Because when you see what the people are thinking and feeling and wanting, it's very often quite different, and so we have to feed that,
Yeah.
feed that energy.
All over
But it's remarkable.
yeah. All over the world, democracy is under assault, and the voice of the people is being negated. And it's nothing. It is the Black Lodge, and that's a powerful collection of first-rate souls. They certainly don't believe in giving the voice to the ordinary person. It's an attack, and we have our 7 years before the year 2025 to do whatever we can esoterically to help turn this around. So we'll be following that, Alex, and thank you for your always lucid thoughts. Appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, the floor is wide open. You can talk about what you want. We've been, obviously, when I look at some of these gatherings around the demagogues, oh my goodness, to me it looks so entirely mindless. The leader is speaking to the instinctual selfish nature, speaking to low desire, speaking to low thought, speaking to inextricable chamamanis. It's not about the mind, it's about people screaming that their selfishness may soon be rewarded. It's kind of a terrifying sight. And I think about how all of this arose in Germany, fascism, and in Italy, and what those forces were. Obviously, the forces of the unregenerate personality, and how they became eventually the law of the land. And you say about countries like United States and Britain, well, it can't happen here, you say. But it just takes a little turn and a little luck on the part of the negative forces. And before you know it, the best plans of centuries of planning are under threat. So we have to take very seriously this worldwide assault on democracy, on freedom, on true freedom, and on giving every human being a voice. Rather, there's this factor of what we call a voter suppression. By very clever means, people are being denied the impact of their vote, whether it's through rearranging the different areas that voting occurs in. They call that gerrymandering, or whether there are other methods. You have to have such and such a card to identify yourself, otherwise you cannot vote. There are all these methods of suppressing the voice of the people. It is an attack. It is an attack. And I was just reading, as I was doing the white magic commentaries, that the true black magicians are never found on the physical plane. Only those who, through lives of selfishness, are responsive to them. But in fact, they're working from the astral and lower mental planes, and in very surreptitious ways are using their tremendous intellect to push all of us towards the reduction of freedom and the reduction of the dignity of the soul. That's happening now. So we have to realize the enemy is alive and well, and even though it's a very uncomfortable thought, we have to do everything we can according to the methods we've been given internally to counteract this assault on our basic humanity. Okay, I'll get off the
Michael.
soapbox now. Yeah, Michael, go ahead.
And Veronica has posted a question, and then Tuija has raised her hand.
Okay, oh great, okay, excellent. So, okay. Excuse me. And Veronica. Okay, and you have actually a couple of things going on here. Isn't one of the work that of disciples to lower the vibration of an idea? Well, lower. Okay, I mean, let's say transform and make assimilable. I don't want to dumb it down. It's not that. It's just to present it with integrity in a way that it can be assimilated. Also, it is difficult for me to distinguish all these illusions. Join the party. It is for me too, but I think I can implant them in my mind. I can repeat them. I can see the main cause. I can see the main cure, and eventually they will be distinct and meaningful to whomever does this. They are 7. Could they have connection to each of the 7 planes? Well, that's something we would have to work out and to think. They certainly have connection to the mental plane and maybe, I don't know, to the subplanes of the mental plane. It's possible to try to allocate them, but before I would do that, I would try really deeply to understand. Before laying a pattern or an arrangement upon an aggregation of different thoughts, I want to understand the thoughts. And you say, I know I am Swiss cheesing things. Okay, that's the 5th ray, but I'm trying to make a map in my mind. Well, what I would suggest, this is just my approach, and I'm not using the 5th ray so much. I try to really understand deeply what is being said before I lock it into a pattern. Now, maybe for some people they say, well, if I can just find the pattern, then I can understand. But my approach is to go deeply into the circumstances surrounding each way of illusion. And then, if a pattern suggests itself, I'll use it. But I always am wary about superimposing a pattern on any aggregation, because the love of pattern imposition, some of my friends, they have a lot of 7th ray, 5th ray, and all that. They love to work with patterns, and sometimes the 2nd ray is called the ray of the divine pattern, but I find them doing that before that which they are organizing is truly understood. So I'm just giving you my perception on this. Words matter, right? Okay, on a lower vibration, it seems to me they are trying to tell people not to talk. Okay, I don't know. For me, I think they're trying to hold the commander-in-chief responsible for the inflammatory rhetoric that he has been producing. And to say that when people hear words, and they hear that with their solar plexus a lot, they just act thoughtlessly and maybe maliciously. And we've seen they can be inflamed to make their virulent thoughts be transformed into actions. This has happened with 2 assaults in the last week, the sending out of 14 pipe bombs and the killing of 11 people and the wounding of 6 others. Who knows what the tipping point is? So a word to the wise is sufficient, but a word to the individual who has no wisdom may be an incendiary prompt to dangerous action. Anyway, without interpretation, it really can be wrongly used. Well, okay, I guess I'm not thinking that we're told not to talk. I'm thinking that we're asked to monitor the value of what we say and its implications. But I could see that if people are fearful and inhibited, they say, well, I can't speak any words that matter, so I better shut up. I mean, that's possible too. The thing, this is happening to Canada, where there are some words that are not to be used, bringing on, wait a second. I don't,
She
Michael?
says bringing on a lot of barriers.
Okay, good. I don't know why I'm not seeing this in my particular map here, but okay, I'm not. Well, look, this question of correct speech, there's been a lot of discussion about politically correct speech. And while sensitive people can try to avoid inflaming and insulting others who have certain sensibilities, there is a danger in it too, because then people will hold back from speaking the truth for fear that it may not be politically correct. That's one danger. The other danger is that people will so defy the idea that they will say the most outrageous things, simply saying, well, I'm not giving in to political correctness. I am saying things as they are. And we see that going on all the time as well. There is a noble middle path here, I think. And I think we have to be sensitive and truthful at the same time. There are many powers that would like to see the average individual just be quiet and not express opinion. Well, you know, in the United States at least, there is a Gemini personality. So the expression of opinion is going to be constant. Under Gemini, the exchange of words and tweets, whatever they are, and all these different modes of intercommunication, there'll be a lot of that. But how it is done, whether it's done hatefully, whether it's done innocuously, whether it's being done truthfully and analytically, the person sending the message has to judge. But for me anyway, and Veronica, I'm not getting the message, don't talk. I'm getting the message, watch your words, their quality, their value, and watch the words of others and see the effect that words have. Okay. Because they can really inflame a situation and bring it to the point of uncontrollability. If you really want to see how words matter, look at England during the Second World War and the oratory of Churchill. I somehow, you know, maybe there's many things about Churchill that were still a little bit defective, but somehow that oratory, to me, inspired and held the nation together and counted for the brave action of millions. So there's, I think, in my view, a positive example. The negative example is the dog whistle, meaning that the prejudiced, biased, bigoted people out there, they're waiting for a signal from the commander to say, the hate that you are expressing is quite okay. I endorse it too, but you get the message and others are missing the message. The dog whistle, you know, only a dog can hear it and the average human cannot hear it. So that is the negative example that's happening all the time. Signals are being sent, be violent, be hateful, be white, get rid of all the other races. America for white men, really, you know. That's the signal that's being sent or will be sent before long. Once we get rid of all the people of color, then we can get rid of the women too. And it'll be America for white men. And obviously, uh, that is incredibly retrogressive. Okay, so that's my response to your thought. Anything else, Michael? Do I have anything else here? Oh, here's Tuija. Okay.
Tuija, and then Karen raised her hand, and then Olivia.
Okay, well, okay, I'm going to try to get to all this. Okay, Tuija, go ahead, please.
Hello. Do you hear me well? Because I'm sideway of the road and talking from my mobile.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Well, thinking again about this very issue, which is the most powerful, and how we can act, we have to think about the building process. And knowing now the occult methods, we have this glamour meditation, which is showing us how things has to be done. And what is the danger is all of the things we do in human world is about the standing phenomenon of the emotional stage, which is going to affect what we see now all around. You know that in occult teaching it is taught us that how we affect the climate and climate affects us, but we really affect the climate. And that shows us about the elemental level, what is happening when this long-standing emotional state continues, which is full of hatred. So what are those methods then, what Master is teaching? He's talking all the time about the loving understanding. He talks in many meditations about love. So there is some very big challenge now for all disciples, because the average human cannot make occultly the changes, because average human is still too much polarized to the emotions. And however civilized we are, I'm sorry, we can hold in some sense our emotions away from the reactive part. But because the emotions are so aligned with this state within a person that it is constantly hating, it is constantly irritated, and that we see everywhere. And we disciples have to be so very, very cautious about our irritations, even though we are not showing them. But we too, we are affected of all of this. So this is the most important, whatever gathering we have, whatever we do at the moment, I think we have to try to make more efforts for having our own gatherings based upon meditation in the loving sense, that we establish in the world via the elemental life those little islands or pillar of lights, which are all the time breathing into the human aura these stabilizing energies of love and compassion, because this has gone too far everywhere, as we can see. And that's why it is not only the one level of elementals which are going to affect. The reactive part of human aura is rampant at the moment, and that's why the black or the dark forces can use it. And then we have some which are born from the heart of humanity, in that sense that we yearn and we dream about the better world. And these are then higher elementals than this reactive part of elementals. And then there are those elementals which have more power over the lower elementals on mental plane, where we humans or who are disciples, we must work at the moment. We don't have any other way to go through this if disciples cannot stand now together in that very loving, compassionate, cool, stable states throughout the whole personality of the disciple, because this is our challenge. It's the challenge of the disciples. This is the era of the forerunners. So we should not so much look what, in that sense, what humanity is doing. We should look the reactions, as DK says, that you cannot see clamor where it is, but you can see as the results of the clamor. And we disciples have huge responsibility at the moment to really, really make these islands, I don't know how to call them, within this reactive part of humanity, this just standing, full of, inside of the new future, full of strength. What is the spirit of the Christ? That is what we have to establish.
Thank you. That's so important. The Black Lodge tries to stir up all kinds of turbulence, fear, and the use of drugs, which is rampant, and that's the way they make humanity unfit to advance. So the words are important. Thank you. And Karen, and then Olivia. Go ahead, Karen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Karen. Or good evening.
Well, it's early morning here.
Oh.
So words matter, and today we had a breath of fresh air when Oprah Winfrey went to Georgia to support Stacey Abrams in her run for governor, and she talked from the heart and used uplifting words of unity and oneness. She talked about the importance of voting and stated, she said, we're created equal, but we're not treated equally. Mm-hmm. And then she reminded us of the sacrifices that many have made to be able to vote and the importance and responsibility of each one of us to vote. It was one of the most uplifting, so sorely needed at this time, loving and inspirational light that I've seen in a long time. It was very, very hopeful.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I've seen, and I think some comment was made that Oprah looks like she's being very effective there, and that her influence could have, I think, on the election a very beneficent result. Let us see. The other man refused to debate. I think he left at the last minute and went on a tour with the president to drum up, what they usually drum up. So, okay, we'll follow that. It's coming. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Anything else that you wanted to say?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And let's see, we have a couple of different things. Olivia, please go ahead. There you go.
Hi, Michael and everyone. Karen, you really gave a really good comment on one of the things I was going to mention. And I think it's really important to have inspiring speakers that can be out there speaking to the public in the most warm-hearted and encouraging way, but also speaking truth as they see it, because that is the best antidote, and it's also the inspiration to action. So President Obama is out on the stump now, going many places. And Michael, I really appreciated how you summarized so much of what's going on in the United States, because it's going on everywhere. And but since we do have this election, and it will affect it will have a ripple effect in so many other countries besides the United States. So I think it's really important for people to speak up, and it's wonderful when we have leaders that really have this amazing ability. I mean, Churchill was a wonderful example to give of what just somebody speaking truth in this dynamic, inspired way can help turn the tide in so many ways. So just wanted to add that. It's 1:30 in the morning here, and I'm with you all, and so appreciating everyone's good thoughts for the highest good for the vote coming up on the November 6th, and adding your good energies for the highest good for the country and the world.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you. Yeah, it will have world implications, and we have responsibility, even in this next week, what we always do, but how we think, even the images and words we use to think. These, not only what we speak, because that will be effective, of course, but our thinking is always going on, even when opportunities to speak are lacking. And so the thought stream that we put into this, our meditative thought stream, is extremely important during this next week. Let's see, I mean, no true value of humanity is ever secured or won without some kind of confrontation with the backward drag into selfishness and personalism. So and I assume we will, when we come through this, the values that are being promoted by the more enlightened members of this battle, those values will be still more firmly established, and the kind of assault that is occurring against those values will have much less opportunity to gain any kind of traction. So we can bring things into a still more stable condition if we fight this fight in the right way. As Master DK said, one of the last things he did say as he was writing, he said, "See that you battle." Well, there are methods of battling, and we know the occult methods, and let's really put them into effect. Well, always, of course, but this week especially, we have a lot of work to do. And okay, Leslie.
It's a long quote, Michael, and you're not going to see it all.
No,
You're
maybe
not going to see it all.
I'm going to see Churchill.
Yes, even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old.
Oh, boy. Thank you, Michael. That battle, the Battle of Britain, is over in that sense. Other battles have taken its place, and they're on the psychological level. So far, as DK said, they should be retained there. But who cannot be stirred by these words and the thought and the spirit behind these words. Sometimes we nice esotericists, affected much by the second ray, don't like to hear Master DK saying, see that you battle. But so it is, and we are called to do that in the most skillful ways possible. So thanks for reading that, Michael. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Leslie, for
Suzanne has another comment.
Yeah, I see it here, and go ahead, Michael, read it.
I was sent a YouTube speech by, believe it or not, Lady Gaga on the power of positive attitudes in speech, etc. At this time, it was quite astounding and may be infiltrating many minds simply due to who she is. Quite surprising, and I suggest it is worthwhile viewing.
Okay, so
she does not provide a link.
We'd have to go someplace that. Yeah, and Tuija is reminding me of what I have reminded you of when we began about our vigil on November the 6th, U.S. time, probably beginning at 5 in the morning. I don't. When do the polls open? 5 or 6, or when do they open?
Typically at 7 in the morning.
Okay, well then maybe
6:30 or 7.
It'll be around. Yeah, it'll be somewhere there, and we'll let everybody know. And you know, it's amazing what some of the celebrities have within them in terms of their humanity and how they can, under pressure, bring that forward and inspire all of us. So maybe we should go looking here for Lady Gaga. You know, she's quite an impressive figure in her own way, and let's just evoke everybody who has a positive outlook. I tell you what, I've been telling you. You know, the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln. Okay, Lincoln has been forgotten, but the spirit of Lincoln, that great avatar for humanity, as he has been called by the Tibetan, still hovers over this whole process. And once again, that which he stood for and the indigo ray of the soul of America will triumph. Now, you know, he was a first ray soul, but, well, there's just no question. That's a second ray monad, okay? So somehow that spirit, and not the spirit of Caliban from The Tempest, you know, the play by Shakespeare, the last play. There's Prospero, there's Ariel, the spirit, and there's Caliban, the unregenerate one. That spirit cannot prevail. The wise spirit of Prospero, of Lincoln, must prevail, with malice towards none and charity for all. Just imagine the meaning of those words in the present political, social context. We're working on it, and we will. I know, like yourself, I work on it every day to evoke the soul of America, because it's not only by warding off the evildoers that one succeeds. One has to invoke and evoke the irresistible power of the soul of the nation concerned, and the eventual second ray soul of humanity. That day will come as well. So I just want to, you know, if I've gotten everybody here, have I?
Vera has her hand raised also.
Okay, Vera too. Okay, Vera. Yes, I see you, Vera. And go ahead, Vera. Go ahead.
I wanted to make some comment, but I probably will not.
Oh, is it on academic things or go ahead.
No, I was stirred up by the American theme. And just my question was, is all that disagreement with what's happening now in the States, is it just because Donald Trump is so embarrassing, so stupid, what would happen if Hillary Clinton was elected? Would people be equally appalled because the policies are virtually the same? That's all
Well,
about this.
I think maybe, if we look into the policies, I think we will see significant differences in taxation, in immigration, in general social interaction, in medical areas. I think we will see, I can't even name them all, I read, his name is North. His last name is North, and he is a writer for the New York Times, and he's brilliant. And let's see, I think his name is Charles North. And it outlined all of the areas which have been undone or threatened to be undone by this present administration. And I think that we would see that although no one's perfect, the policies are not the same, in my view, anyway, Now let's see if I can find North. His name is Richard North Patterson. Richard North Patterson. And if you can get a hold of what he has said, he is so brilliant, so truthful. And let's see if I have maybe I don't have this entirely correct. I think I tried to copy it the other day. This is it. Voters. It's about moral bankruptcy, and this is the man. Voters must reject the moral bankruptcy of Donald Trump's Republican Party. Now I know that this is serious, and if you read this man, Vera, I think you will see all the ways in which the policy would be different. Not perfect, but the values, the preservation of values on the first ray would be there instead of the disruption and casting out of absolutely essential values. This is my opinion. So why not look him up, Richard North Patterson, and about moral bankruptcy, and see what you think after reading that article.
I absolutely agree. I was referring to international policies, what the United States was standing for in the bigger world. I know there will be big changes internally.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. We will watch and we will see, but we will also work esoterically. Now, look, friends, a lot of time has passed, and we've had a good discussion. So I just want to make sure we have a little time for our meditation, which is, of course, very important. And, and we can carry on this meditation, referencing the group during this time, even though we will not be together in that sense. But we will be together, of course. So let's do our meditation, and we're going to focus on this blatant lying and manipulation. I mean, the truth has no place in the kinds of things that are being said simply to, as they have the word, rile up the crazies. Rile up the crazies. It's a deliberate policy. All right, so let's work a little bit here. I'll abbreviate because I know it's late for some of you. It's the wee hours of the morning. So just in our silence, we come together. Wherever we are, and we're in the same space of consciousness, knowing that what can happen in one country can happen in any country, especially if that country has a motto of "I light the way." We don't want the road to perdition, you know. And we blend the lights. We know how to do this. Vitality and the light of mind merge on the plane of mind, and we bring down the light of the soul. Of course, we protect ourselves with the formula. We can say it. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And this lighted cross of divinity protecting us individually, protecting the group, it's the light we are working with. This is the technique of light. The lights come together on the mental plane, vitalized thought, soul-inspired thought, a triple light as one. And when we see that triple light merging into one, because this is our weapon, and this is also our light of revelation, in case we do not see the glamours, this light will help us detect them. And we say together, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. We know the light of day is the light of the intuition, it's the light of Scorpio, it's the light of the Buddhic plane, and where the monads of the human group are at work. 3 ohms. So we are fortified, we are protected, we're in the light, and our beam will be sent out onto the astral plane, our searchlight, detecting these glamours, what they do, and using the light to help dissipate these glamours. We might just say, we hope the electoral body, in this case, comes to its senses. The meaning of that, thinks clearly. So our formula, radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we visualize our beam penetrating into the astral plane, the fogs, the clouds, the veils, the miasmas, the areas of darkness and density, Our instrument, the lighted beam, will help lift all of that which causes distortion and confusion and misleads so many who cannot think clearly about these matters. So we fortify our being with the spiritual will. It comes from deep within us. It is a power. And we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And we're going to attempt to weaken this glamour of lying manipulation. Let's call it that for the moment. Selfish lying manipulation. Think for a moment about all that those three factors in combination, all that they do. What is their result? The lies, the selfishness, the manipulation. What is the result? We know we are workers in the field of unity, but this selfish lying manipulation to protect the lower ego and its prerogatives is dividing everybody. And what Caesar said is true: divide and conquer. So we must be the bridge builders and the unifiers, and we cannot let these methods divide us from each other and from other nations and nations from nations. It's a challenge, and we must overcome this divisive tendency. So we utter the words of power, and we see the strength of our being and how it is attacking the darkness, the fogs, the veils, which are allowing distortion to affect so many good possibilities. And we say, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of, and we'll say, selfish, lying manipulation. Prevents the appearance of selfish, lying manipulation. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. The combination of the three errors, selfishness, lying, manipulation. Humanity is seen as not affected by these negative forces. So we will have selflessness, truth, and self-determination without the attempt to sway our thought and feeling and action. And the third, the power of our united light destroys the life, the vitality behind this combination of errors, this combination of glamours, destroys the life behind it. So that upon humanity, the sun of selflessness shines, the sun of truth shines, the sun of responsible self-determination shines in the great clearing that we need to be free of these nefarious forces. So now for a few minutes, we visualize the light penetrating the glamour. It is weakening, it is dissipating, it is dying, and with silence and intensity of purpose, we proceed. there is a great sun of selflessness, of truth, of responsible self-determination, so that one cannot be manipulated from without and do things that one would never do except for the power of that manipulation. These things must be achieved. It's a long process, but even now we can attempt to think of others and their welfare, and we can present the truth as we know the truth to be, rather than distort it for our own personal advantage. These negative values are being thrown in our face at this time, and we must overcome them by asserting the great spiritual values and remembering that in this political department of the first ray, the preservation of values is the work of the initiates found on that ray. So the astral plane must be transformed, Kama Manas must be divided so that there can be true Manas and true Kama. And we must at last see clearly what is happening and take those steps necessary to make the good appear and banish the evil, retrogressive evil, which wants to take us back into prison. There are so many prisons, and right in the mind, maybe we can find one of the greatest prisons. So let us work with human consciousness and with our own as well. We turn off our beam, we retract it onto the mental plane, into the triple light, and we realize that good has been done, some little bit of penetrating and dissipating these prevalent, distorting glamours. Some little bit has been accomplished, and we will persist. And we'll sound the Om 3 times, seeing a little bit of clearing on the mental, emotional, and etheric physical planes. Okay, friends, we continue with our Ask program, dealing tomorrow with the soul of nations. It's a morning, we're on the morning schedule, and you remember that it is, unfortunately for some and fortunately for others, it's 6 a.m. now, GMT, at least this week, and we'll see how that operates. For the moment, we're at the 6 o'clock times. And then Sunday, attracting money for hierarchical purposes. And Tuija and I will let you know about the vigil that we'll hold here in the Temple of Silence and how that will be operating. You'll receive that via your constant contact mailing list and in other ways. And you'll be welcome to drop in at any time and be with us. We'll just, sort of hold that ongoing space, whether it will be a webinar. I think it probably will be a broadcast, because then we can use certain music to enhance the meditation, which is not possible during a webinar. I think we've said enough. Now we really need to meditate it into existence. So lots of love to everybody, and thank you for your participation. We'll be meditating all during that vigil, and you'll be on your own in a way. But on the other hand, you'll be with the group at the same time. So your own methods will be applied. Okay, friends, we'll see you then, and tomorrow, and also, and thank you everybody, of course, for being here. Thank you, Suzanne, thank you. We're all supporting each other in this effort to work esoterically on behalf of the uplift of humanity. So, all the best, and see you ongoingly as may be possible. Bye-bye.